frontier is defined as uncharted territory by land or ocean. Those who chart that territory tell a story. The past illustrates the blueprint for the present, how things are and how they've evolved. From land to water, we are challenged to border that new frontier, a frontier the outdoorsman knows like no other. Author Gary Lewis works his way along that edge of where discoveries, failures, and achievements have written the story of the sportsman.
Yes! Yes!
From state to state, continent to continent, the stories told create the foundation of the present, and they lay the framework for the future. Through the muzzle fire and on the stone are stories from the edge.
Water is the most important thing as far as Indians are concerned, 'cause that's life.
The past is written, the present is here, and this is Frontier Unlimited. In May and June, they fill the Willamette River, strung out by the tens of thousands for a mile below the falls. Once an old-timer told Lewis, the shad run when the pink dogwood blooms. Lewis had a pink dogwood in their yard when they lived in Gladstone, at the junction of Clackamas and the Willamette Rivers. When they moved to Oregon City in 1991, Lewis planted a dogwood there. When it bloomed, he knew it was time to go fishing. A person can learn a lot about history of Oregon in the spray of Willamette Falls. That's why Lewis pulled homeschooled 12-year-old Gus Smith away from his studies at the end of June to make a run to Oregon City. They checked in at the Best Western Rivershore Hotel near Clackamas Park. In the morning, they trotted out to the dock to meet Rob Crandall and 11-year-old Tanner. Above them, on Interstate 205, a calamity of commuters had conspired to spread a traffic jam betwixt Vancouver and Tualatin. They passed beneath the Oregon City Bridge and could see the falls ahead. Salmon fishermen trolled for late spring Chinook, and shad anglers were anchored in various runs.
So Gary, right now we still have a number of spring Chinook coming through here. These are Chinook that are headed for the upper Willamette, the McKenzie, Sandy M rivers.
Yep.
And this year, with all the snowpack we've had and the high flows, the fish have really seemed to come in really late.
Mm-hmm.
So here it is, the middle of June, there's still some salmon coming through.
We're right below Willamette Falls here at Oregon City, and this is one of the most culturally and historically significant sites in all of the Northwest, and I think it is probably the most important historical site in Oregon. Everybody came here first. I like how you just throw that anchor right over the top of your fly rod. That is just skill and talent.
Yeah,
an anchor won't break one of those.
You should see the anchor tossing contest the fishing guides have up here.
They do that at Lava Lake too.
So we do 2 jet boats up here, fly fishing for shad. He's on another one of our favorite spots. We call that the Point.
Yeah.
This is the first time the water's been low enough this year that they can actually access the falls.
Yeah.
It has literally been roaring this year.
Yeah.
When I started the first week of June, it's dropped almost 5,000 CFS, which is almost, the entire flow of the Deschutes, right?
Right.
And it's still much, much higher than it has been this time of year.
What they're doing over here is a survey of the lamprey habitat. The lamprey is a cultural and historical part of the whole anadromous fish ecosystem, and these things are migratory, And this is one of the places that they know that they can find them. So they're doing a survey right now of the habitat and seeing what kind of numbers of lampreys can be found here, and then what they might be able to do to assist in restoration and recovery of the species.
This is the gray line, that's the sinking portion. This is the floating portion. This is what gets our fly down to where the shad are. We need to be down about 6 feet. That's where we like to be down to. It's about 30 feet deep out here, so we can let it sink a little bit, not worry about hitting rocks. But right over in here, it's kind of snaggy. So we want to make sure we're moving the fly and retrieving the fly through there fairly briskly. What works best, Gus, is kind of do a straightened roll cast and kind of flip it out straight. And then see the junction of the line here? That's somewhere in the middle of the rod. That's a good zone to cast this line out from. I'm moving it along. I've got the line under my finger on the rod hand, and then I'm moving that along fairly briskly. As that comes in, there's a shad. A lot of times it's fairly soft the way they hit the fly. So you'll just feel kind of a thunk, almost like your fly's being pulled through jello. I want to keep the rod off of the boat, okay? There we go. There's a shad. All right. The way I like to deal with these guys, they really wiggle. So the best way I found to get a grip on them, to get them to stop wiggling, is going to give them a little pinch right there. Otherwise, they'll be flopping all over in the boat. And then you could grab them like this and hold them. What's interesting about the shad is they don't actually have teeth. So they're actually, if you look inside, they're a plankton feeder. So kind of like a whale. Oh, there he goes. Well, good thing he went outside the boat instead of in the boat.
So don't ever say whale around a shad. They just, that's what they're afraid of the most.
That and guts. Tell you what, I'll toss one out here for you and I'll hand it to you and you practice the retrieve, okay?
Shad were introduced as a food fish, another commercial opportunity all up and down the West Coast. And they took off in places like the Sacramento River and the Umpqua River, the Coos, and the Columbia. And so we've got a really healthy run of shad. And when I say healthy, I'm talking millions and millions and millions of fish in the Columbia system and the Willamette. And this is as far as they come upstream in the Willamette. And they provide a really good sport fishery now from May into June. And so we're here middle of June on the Willamette at Willamette Falls, kind of the hub of shad fishing on the Willamette River.
A plankton eater, the American shad is the biggest of the herring species and averages 3 to 5 pounds. Gus took over, shaking the line out from the rod tip.
A little crisper on your strip.
He picked up the line and laid it down.
Going around the corner, right? That's where they love to hit the fly. There you go, you got him, buddy. Good job. Right. Oh, keep pulling, keep stripping line in. Just keep stripping it in. He's still there. There you go. Gus, move to your left just a little bit. There you go. Hey, all right, good job, guys. First shad. Way to go. Good job, Tim. We're gonna give him the pancake flop. There he goes.
There we go. That is a big one.
Got such big scales. They call them mini tarpon or poor man's tarpon because they have some similar characteristics to a tarpon, like this little kype on the mouth that looks similar to a tarpon, and then the big scales. Really cool fish.
Well, that was fun. Let's catch like 30 more of those now.
scoop.
That's another big one.
Good. Got him. Good job. Another feisty shad. Shad fishing seems to be a little bit on the slow side of what I'm used to with all this high water. Part of it's just been being able to work with the different flows and the different height of the water and how the current's so much different than a normal year. So as the water's been dropping and the run seems to be coming in a little bit later, and fishing's been improving as the month progresses.
Prospecting for shad, look at the condition of the water. High, heavy flows make it difficult for the angler to control the boat, reach the fish, and read the water. Optimum conditions are when there is 5 to 7 feet more of visibility. Crandall looks for areas where the water is soft on the edge of a fast current. Crandall finds better success on dark days with chartreuse and fluorescent orange combinations, and flash is important.
Nice fish, pal. That there's a shad. Love it.
Excellent. Thank you.
Here, let me get one.
My eyeball.
Dribbling water-soluble goodness onto the shad dart earned Lewis a fish, the first cast each time.
I put banana on a shad dart one time and it works.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, these shad, if you have the right size, they hit it. But if you get too big, they don't.
There, fish
Oh,
hole.
there it is.
First cast. It works.
Oh, nice job. Double, Gary.
Okay. There we go. Got a double.
Hey, there we go. It's busy here in Shadville. Sing, away goes.
Casting distance is not much of an issue. Some anglers pay out line while others use the lob and launch. It takes a fairly short back cast and then a strong forward stroke.
There you go. No rest on that net.
Oh, got one. This time, guys, let's net both these fish at one time. You did it.
They fought 2 fish in the net at one time and Tanner netted them.
Every time I put that stuff on, first cast. Ooh, it's a big one. Okay, here we go.
He's so big. He's so big. That's probably the biggest one we've caught so far.
Boy, these guys are not cutting you any slack, Gary. The males come in first, and they tend to be a lot smaller, and then the females show up later in the run. Just the last few days, there's a lot of the larger females. Some of those are in that 18 to 20 inch range. It's pretty hefty.
No one counted, but they must have brought 25 or 30 shad in 3 hours. Generally, you need about 5 feet down, Crandall said. That's where the long sink tip comes into play, dropping the fly fast. No more than 30 inches of leader is necessary.
Go. That picture. Look at that. Ooh, doggies.
Just like trout. There we go. shad. There we go. Not quite Shadzilla, huh? See ya.
All these mills that were fishing around, you could trace it back to 1826 when John McLaughlin built the first mill race on that side of the river. In 1865, they built a woolen mill in the downtown part of Oregon City. There was a paper mill started here not too long after that, 1921, I think. So you could see all this history. You could see how the town developed on that side of the river first and then here. But this is where everybody was coming to on the Oregon Trail. They were coming here first and then they dispersed down toward Eugene and over to a place they called Stumptown, which we know as Portland now. It all started because this was the place where the Indians came together and they'd fish and do their trading. So tribes from all up and down the Willamette River would come here, the Clackamas and the Molalla and the Kalapuya, the Indians that lived out on the Tualatin Plain. I mean, this was wild, wild country. And it's still pretty wild right here in Oregon City.
Yeah, what we like to do is associate our boat position near the edge of current. Shad really kind of orient to current, and so if I'm able to get my fly down about 6 feet deep in the edge of that current, it kind of acts as a funnel to send those shad right our way.
I got another one. As soon as we pulled into this new spot, and Rob showed me the technique, I started working that little hang down slack line kind of deal, and it's a little deeper water maybe.
We're giving you a good tussle here.
It's a monster. You think he's gonna jump? I bet he jumps.
Yep. Got it.
He didn't jump very good, did he?
You want a picture with him?
Go ahead and let that one fly.
Current changes a lot in here. You got fluctuations with the tide changing every day up and down, and then you also have the rivers dropping this time of year. So you can see a kind of ebb and flow of the current. And adjusting your fishing approach to that speed of the current is also important. There's another shad. Whoa, whoa. Didn't fight it first. That was just a really soft take. Yeah, that's the funny thing about fishing on the Willamette River. You can catch so many different species.
Yeah.
And on this shad fly, we've caught shad, of course, but salmon, steelhead, and I've even had sturgeon literally just engulf the fly, which just amazed me. Hey, Mr. Shad. I love that iridescent color around their eyes.
Yeah,
it's just incredible. It kind of reminds me of like a peacock herl. And then their shine, you know, classic herring, you know, it's got this beautiful coloration here, totally different coloration near their back. It's a really neat fish.
You're making me hungry. I got the poor man's tarpon right here. When they jump, you can hear their gills rattling. It's just rattle, 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 just like a tarpon when it jumps. Just like a tarpon, except for 5 pounds. 3 pounds, 4 pounds, not 100. There, nice net job, Tanner. Can you reach down in there and grab that fish? Oh yes, oh yeah. Okay, we're gonna throw them back in the water. Wow!
So shad flies are really fairly simple. Shad are used to eating plankton and small fish, euphisids. So small profile, but bright and flashy seems to work really the best for shad. So I have a variety of different color combinations. Most of these have either silver or gold flash in them, some chartreuse or orange. These combinations work really well, but the thin profile of a shad fly is really one of the keys to being effective with shad. So fun to have a fishery that you can actually go out and catch a bunch of fish. And you know, with the numbers of shad that we have in the Willamette and Columbia system, you're gonna catch some. And it's so great, you know, my son can grow up with a fly rod in his hand and catching a bunch of fish. I love it. It's a cool thing.
Get it.
Nice.
The falls on the Willamette are 24.5 miles up from the confluence of the Columbia. It is still a gathering place, but in the frenetic pace of life on the river's banks, their significance is often forgotten. Downstream in the mill race, a student of the river has time to reflect. Lewis told Gus and Tanner about dogwood blossoms. Someday they will see pink dogwood bloom, and they will remember the falls in Oregon City when shad flashed in the green water and rattled their gills like tarpon.
They sound kind of creepy. Real estate nor money.